All right. So you were at the courtroom as well, you say. First of all, welcome, let me say. Do you want to introduce yourself, Scott?
Sure. I normally write about architectural history. That's normally my thing. I write about the homes of creative people throughout history, and John Lennon, guys from Pink Floyd, David Bowie, guys like that. And people were asking me about Johnny Depp's homes, specifically his penthouses. So I put together a video to talk about the Eastern Columbia building in Los Angeles because it's beautiful. It's a historic building, major architectural and historical significance. And it got, I think, 260,000 views pretty quickly. So I thought, okay, that's kind of cool that people are interested in that. And so I did some videos on his French village. I did a video on his island. I did a video on his home on Sweetser. Just architectural stuff, historical stuff, nothing weird. If he lived in just a regular mansion, in Miami, I wouldn't have done anything about it. But Johnny Depp
Right.
really has great taste and owns some beautiful homes. So anyway, I'm in Washington, D.C. a lot. I'm in Virginia a lot. And so I passed by the courthouse and I just started talking to people online. And it's a creepy crowd. It's a creepy crowd that was out there. You would have hundreds of women, and they were Johnny Depp fans in all shapes and sizes.
Right.
So I started spending so much time on the line that after a while I just started going in. And so I became friendly with DUI guy and James, and we all sat together, and we were astonished that you have an entire world filled with people, and it's you, right? And it's me,
Mhm.
and DUI guy, and a handful of others, and we're the only people interested in telling the truth about what's going on in there. That there was no real media. It was incredible to us. And
Mhm.
so we thought, well, all right, let's go ahead and see what we could find out as far as the jury and what they might be thinking and what the gallery is like, and just try to gather some information to share with the world because nobody else seemed to care enough to do it. So that was the motivation.
Well, it was amazing. Like, okay, looking at UK, you can see the difference between like a UK 2020 and this, where you only had the media telling the story. Like, if you look at
Yeah.
what the media talks about, you see their version of it. Like, I feel like I live in an alternate world or something. If I read the headlines about this versus like talking to, again, people that were there or seeing it myself, it's like, again, it's like Fantasy Island versus, and I'm glad like people like yourself. So what were some of your observations from being in there?
Well, I don't mind telling you about the line first, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Um, the situation outside was incredible. The police officers, I don't think it matters how much they get paid or don't get paid. They're they're following orders. But basically, we were on our own, and it was like Lord of the Flies, right? Is that the name of it? Where people would show up, let's say Monday morning, right? You got to be in court at 7 o'clock. They hand out the bracelets. There would be people at the courthouse camping out 24 hours earlier, 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, not showering, not eating, not doing anything except sitting on concrete just to be able to hold their space. And by the time and everybody had to do that, and I think I think the judge, right, made some sort of decision where the media was not going to get special access,
Right.
and so everybody had to wait online if you were going to get in, and it was absolutely brutal for us because nobody can physically do this where you're up all night long and then you're sitting in the courtroom, from 8:30 in the morning until 5 or 5:30, and then as soon as you leave the courthouse, people are back online again, and so then you're finding yourself back online, and there's just no way to deal with it. By the time you get in there, it was amazing. So okay, so as far as my observations, what would you like to know about the gallery? Would you like to know about how Amber is, or Whitney, or the jury? Whatever you want to know, I'm happy to tell you.
Let's go with let's do them all first. Let's go with the gallery first. What were your observations on the gallery?
Okay, well, the gallery is filled with Depp supporters, 100%. I think the entire time that I was there, the only person who was ever on Amber's side, ever, was Whitney. And she wasn't there all the time. She was there during the last week. And it was kind of lonely. You almost felt bad for her. I mean, she's just sitting there all by herself. And periodically she would turn and look at DUI guy and myself, and then she would turn around. We began to wonder if she was trying to listen to our conversations, because we just wondered, why in the world would you be there? She had to have felt the daggers in the back of her head. Nobody likes her. I mean, she has every right to be there, obviously. And I think one other time there was a girl in there. I think she must have been 19 or 20 years old, and she told me that she was there to support Amber. And I asked her, I said, well, okay. I said, that, why? What are your thoughts about her case? She goes, oh, I don't know. I said, okay, but you support her, right? He goes, yeah. I said, but can you tell me why? She goes, well, we're lesbians. And I said, that's your reason? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So that's interesting. I don't know how many people on Depp's side was there because they were heterosexual like he is, but either way, that's what showed. And I never saw her ever again. She showed up that one time, and that was it. So I think that Camille mentioned that even, didn't she? That Amber burns a lot of bridges.
Yes.
She didn't have a single friend there. Nobody. The only people that she had there were people who worked for her. So that was unusual. The other thing also is, on the line outside, people didn't know where to sit. They wanted to either sit on the left side. They could either sit on the left side behind Johnny Depp, or they sat on the right side behind Amber. And people seemed to think that if they sat on the side behind Amber, they would get a really great view of Johnny Depp. And you really don't. I mean, if you see what he does, he comes in, he sits down, and he leans forward. Right. So you're either getting a view of directly of the back of his head, or you're getting a side angle of the back of his head. But anybody who thought that they were going to come in there and see photos and see Johnny Depp, it's not something that was going to happen. In fact, one of the things that disturbed me the most is that people like us who are serious and wanted to be able to gather information, it was difficult to get in, and we were up against people that just didn't know anything about the trial, didn't care too much about the trial. They thought it was going to be a meet and greet. People showed up with gifts to give to him. People were crying. One lady said she was on the Make-A-Wish Foundation for 6 years, and her dying wish is to meet Johnny Depp, and she thought that this was going to be her big opportunity. And I would tell her, I said, why would you want to distract him like this? I said, this guy is involved in a major legal battle, a life-changing legal battle. The amount of money, the amount of stress and anxiety that he's dealing with right now. The last thing he needs is the stress that people. I don't know if you heard about the story of the lady with the turquoise hat. Do you know that story?
No. Well, even if there's a pertinent story, just throw them in there. Yeah. That way, we'll all hear them.
Yeah. Right, well, there was a lady who was told me that she was dating Johnny Depp. She told everybody online she was dating him for the last 10 years, and she has to keep moving to different hotels in Fairfax because the paparazzi might find out about her, and she doesn't want that. And she has some texts that she has exchanged supposedly with Johnny Depp, and she showed them to me. And it's creepy stuff. I don't want to freak out your your audience. I won't tell you what some of the images were that she sent to this Johnny Depp person but it was kind of scary, unfortunately. So that's what the gallery was like. It was a lot of people that, if you watch the video of of it in the morning, it's packed, and then as the day wanes on, people just slowly leave. During the breaks and during lunch, because it's not what they expected it to be. A lot of people don't expect. I don't know what they expected. But a courtroom is not fun and games. It's not a carnival. It's not a party. It's not a meet and greet. It's serious stuff. And I think a lot of people just didn't expect that. Let me tell you about Amber. So she walks into the room. She comes in from the side on the far right, and she does the little huggy thing with her attorneys, and then she sits down. But she has this smirk on her face that she just can't seem to get rid of. And I don't know, I just don't know why she didn't have a public relations firm or, somebody, a publicist, to just tell her to keep her face neutral, because she just has this really unusual look on her face that you can't stand her, And Whitney has this look on her face also that she just like her dog just died. Now, you can't expect her to be happy, but she looks absolutely miserable. And Johnny Depp, even though he's going through all the horrible things that he's going through, he walks in, he's pretty jolly, he shakes hands with everybody, he smiles. And then he acknowledges the gallery at the very end, and he waves to everybody. And people just absolutely love that. It's like fulfills their dream, which is nice. So people are happy about that. As far as the jury, do you have any questions about them? I think number 9 is everybody's favorite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just, I mean, tell general observations, and tell us about 9 too, if you want to.
Yeah, number 9. I mean, that's what we refer to him as. I think the DUI guy thinks he might be Hawaiian or from the Philippines. But I spoke to a couple that was Vietnamese that was in the gallery once, and I asked if they could help me identify where he's from, and they both thought that he was Vietnamese. So whether he is or not, who the heck knows? But either way, this guy has this perpetual smile on his face every single day. It's really just, it's so warm and so beautiful, this guy. But what's interesting is that he never really looked at Amber. What he does is, if anything, he'll shift his eyes when she was on the stand, but he would never turn his head and look at her directly. So, right, it was fascinating. Now, he never rolled his eyes, never laughed at her, he never did anything like that, but he just didn't kind of want to look at her. And, you think about that, the psychology, right, of how you behave around people you don't like. And if you don't like somebody, you find it difficult to look at them in the face, right? So that's number 9. Number 8, she's the one who unfortunately has been, she's an alternate now. She's the Caucasian lady, and we think she's in her 50s, right? And she seemed a bit warm also. She also didn't seem to want to look at Amber all that much. And then you have, I'm going back and right now, let's see, 9, 8, 7, 6. You probably know about 7 and 6. 7 and 6 were Caucasian guys. 7 is a younger dude, and 6 was an older guy, and he looked like he was watching a tennis match. This guy was very respectful to the whole legal process. I mean, whether or not he was really paying attention or not, who the hell knows, but he sure looked it. And so, right, so when the attorneys spoke, he looked at them. When Amber or Johnny Depp or any of the witnesses spoke, he looked at them. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. If you didn't know he was in a courtroom, I'm telling you, he looked like he was watching a tennis match. So I thought that somebody like that would be the foreman. And it's entirely possible he would be, because he just seems to be held together really well. He seems to be really bright. He kind of looks like a professor or something. Now, the thing that's interesting to me is that 3 of the jurors in the back were wearing masks all day long. And that was juror number 1 and juror number 3. Juror number 4 and juror number 5. And juror number 5, we think, is a Vietnamese lady. So it's almost impossible to read her, because somebody's wearing a mask, all you're seeing are her eyes, and there's not really much to go by. And 4 is an African-American lady, always dressed really, really nice, bright, colorful clothing, paying attention. She also is wearing a mask, so tough to read her. We really couldn't figure out what nationality number 3 was. I think DUI guy and James and a few others thought that he might be Italian, but I don't really know. 2 I liked a lot. 2, I think, have you ever met anybody who's had a seizure?
Oh, yeah.
You know, you have, okay. I think that number 2 may suffer from, is it called petit mal seizures, the very, very minor ones?
Yeah.
Not the kind where you're falling on the floor, frothing at the mouth. Right. But we watch him all the time, and periodically he seems to fall asleep. Now, there's no way he's falling asleep, because if he falls asleep, one of the lawyers is probably going to notice it and probably say something. I would assume that's a problem if a juror falls asleep. So, but he's doing something. So the other day, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, I'd have to check my notes, but he started having involuntary muscle controls. It looked like his shoulders and his arms were shaking. And he had this blank look on his face, right? Because that's what happens when you have a seizure, because your brain is sort of, shutting down for a minute from the stress of it all. And then he sort of dozed off. And neither of the jurors that were next to him seemed to even have noticed or paid attention. So Larry and I, and there was another lady with us also, we were looking at this like, there's no way this is not happening. And we tried to even tell, it was so, in our opinion, it was so severe that we tried to notify one of the officers in the court, and nothing came of that. So whether or not,
that's crazy, man. That's crazy. Nobody helped either.
I know. Well, I spoke during the break. I went over to the officer. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I don't want to draw attention to the guy. But I said to him, I said, listen, I said, assuming one of the jurors had a medical emergency, and we noticed it and nobody else did. What is the protocol? What do you want us to do? Because we tried to notify one of the officers, but it's a strange situation while court's going on. You're in the gallery. You can't say anything. You can't stand up. You can't do anything. I mean, maybe if it was something really bad. Well, if it was much worse, somebody would have noticed. But it was so minor, that unless you're really staring at him, like I said, there's people that have seizures like that all the time, and I don't know if that's what's. Now, this is the gentleman who's deaf, by the way, who wears the, or at least not, if not deaf, has some kind of hearing impairment.
Right.
But it really was fascinating, and I really do think that that's what happened. I don't know for sure, and it might not have been a seizure. It could have been something else. I mean, there's other things also. Seizures are an amazing thing. It's basically an electrical misfiring in the brain, and sometimes it can be very minor, and you recover from it very quickly. But also, your muscles extend out, and it causes a lot of stress on the body, and you need time to recover. So I don't know what happened, and none of us do. But the officer did tell me that things like that have happened in the past. There are jurors that have, some sort of seizure or something like that, very, very minor. And if it's worse, if it's something really bad, then they'll do something about it. But if it's something they quickly recover from, then they don't. And number one, like I said, wore a mask also, so it was kind of hard to read. So, I don't want to lie to your audience. I know that there's a lot of YouTube channels filled with people lying, and it's fun
Sure.
to lie. I guess some people in there, it's good clickbait, and you get a million.
Yep.
So but it seems to me that the truth of what happened in there might not be the sexiest thing in the world, but I think it's of more value than lying. And I just keep hearing strange stories that just aren't true, and I'm just wondering what I can do to just sort of tell the truth about what happened in there. For example, the weird story about Amber and Elaine having an argument in the hallway. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that never happened. In a million freaking years, that never happened. Amber doesn't leave. That doesn't go to the gallery. Never. She would never do it. It would be such a security concern that there's no chance she's going through the gallery and into the public hall. No chance, no way is that happening. If she has her own room to go to, the lawyers are able to go to it, and the idea that she and Elaine would have an argument in front of the cameras or in front of Depp fans is ridiculous. So, that's just one of the many strange stories that I see floating around out there where people have entire conversations about it. And I'm telling you that there's no way that happened.
Well, you're going to have a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of click that can be brought from something like that. People like salacious, they love juicy, and people will just manufacture stories. They'll manufacture them out of thin air because, of course, truth is stranger than fiction. I mean, look at this whole story that's happening in front of us with the Depp trial. In many ways, it's like a mythic story, like the Wizard of Oz. Where you have Dorothy starts off in the black and white normal world of Kansas, right? And then this tornado comes into her life and pulls her out and throws her into this unknown land. And she has to meet this mentor, the Good Witch. And her job is to try to get to the Emerald City and figure out a way to get home. And along the way, she meets allies, she meets enemies, she meets shapeshifters and shadows and all sorts of stuff. And the Johnny Depp trial is like that in a lot of ways. And what I thought that they did, his team, which was absolutely brilliant, is it's very difficult for jurors or for anybody really to relate to Johnny Depp. He's incredibly handsome, incredibly wealthy, incredibly famous. And so rather than starting the trial talking about this, incredibly handsome, wealthy, and famous man and how he's, arguing with his ex-wife, they went back in time and they created his normal world as his life as a child, because people can relate to that. He doesn't have much money, doesn't, have much, his family life leaves a lot to be desired. And so that was a great launching pad, I think, that they did, which was great. And then to bring in Isaac Baruch and bring in these other people to show that Johnny Depp has long-term relationships. People stick with him for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, people that he was friends with in high school and middle school,
he's still friends with. And that speaks volumes about his character and the fact that all of these women that he dated, with the exception of Miss Barkin, seems to have nothing but even. And actually, I don't even know. I think that was built up to be a little bit worse than it actually was. She
Oh
didn't really
yeah.
do much damage there.
Well, she's been involved in every high profile Me Too lawsuit there's been too. So I thought that would have been an interesting thing to disclose in the court, but they didn't. They didn't even, because I mean, what did she do? She didn't really. He threw a bottle once upon a time, and okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think everybody was disappointed in her testimony because you're like, what? Wait a minute, that's your story? That he didn't even throw it, tossed it, whatever the heck even that means. Underhand tossed, what exactly does that mean? So, if anything, that shows Johnny Depp in a bad light. What do you mean? This guy's tossing things like a 12-year-old girl? I don't even know what that means. But I mean, maybe that's the best she was able to do to try to diminish him, that he tosses instead of throws. So, but anyway, but the jury is it's an interesting group. The whole American judicial system is fascinating because, right, this is supposedly a jury of his peers, right? But not really. I mean, how do you who's his peers? It would have to be, it'd have to bring Heath Ledger back from the dead and Brad Pitt and, a few other people. And obviously that's not the way it works. So I think that they did an excellent job just portraying him as somebody that obviously isn't perfect, has had his share of issues. And this is the circumstance that, that the tornado that just sort of came into his life, and he's just trying to find his way back home. And I think in many ways, Johnny Depp has already won, no matter what the verdict is, because it's like, when you watch a lot of Greek dramas, right? You read like the Iliad, or you read Jason and the Argonauts, or some of these others. He's not looking for a golden fleece. He's not looking for a holy grail. He's not looking for, like Indiana Jones. He's not trying to track down all of these treasures. What he's really trying to do is just find his way home. Tell the truth about what happened, and to be able to return, and get his life back to the way it was, or in some way at least be able to recover from the misery that's been brought upon him.
Well, I mean, he could have gone with an easy. He could have gone with an easy win if he just wanted a court win. He could have gone with NDA violation. I mean, that obviously clearly happened. But when you do that, you don't get to present what really happened behind the thing. Everybody would have been saying, "Man, Johnny Depp, he's trying to silence Amber Heard. Why is he trying to silence her?" So yeah, he had to have something that looks a little more like vindication. And I agree. I think there were two battles going on here, and really the primary battle was the court of public opinion. That's why he wanted so desperately to have cameras in the courtroom, with good reason. I mean, again, you don't want anyone else stepping between you and your story. You want people just to see it. And really, when I read about when I read the mainstream telling me what Amber Heard looked like and what she had to say versus me watching it with my own eyes, I feel like I'm in La La Land reading what they say. How do people react to her testimony anyway?
The gallery shakes their head in disbelief. I think that I think people are offended when they're lied to their face. And first of all, nobody wants to be lied to on the earth. You couldn't go over to anybody at a bus stop or at a restaurant and say, "Hey, do you like to be lied to?" Nobody wants to be lied to. Nobody. But when it's so obvious, as it was with this, it was just unbelievable. The story about her being vaginally raped with the bottle, was that even did that just come out of the blue? I mean, was that ever mentioned before? I mean, maybe
it may have been. There was some stuff mentioned behind closed doors in UK 2020. But we don't know. I know she actually alleged 4 instances of sexual assault. Some of those are new, for sure. I know at least one existed before, but like I said, we never had any of that come forward. And yeah, none of that existed before the 2020 trial. She just kind of created those out of thin air, and they just kept coming.
One thing that really people in the gallery were offended by, and during the breaks you saw it especially, was that nonstop effort to cry. Nobody knows what the hell that was. Nobody in there. I mean, everybody has met somebody who has cried, right? You, in your lifetime, you have seen somebody cry, right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
That's not, nobody knows what that was. To be in a constant state of emotional collapse over every freaking thing, to have no ebb and flow is, Johnny Depp's team put together a great story. Like I said, it was like a mythic story. Act
Right.
1, Act 2, Act 3. We're going to start off with talking about me as this crying bit where everything, no matter what it is so horrible. And I think what's fascinating is, what was the story supposed to be? For example, because it can't be both. Is she this strong woman? She survived, this horrible abuse, sexual abuse, but she's not going to let it tear her down. She's going to stay strong. She's going to not be broken down by it. Or is she going to be an emotional wreck who can't get past anything, that she's so overwhelmed by her post-traumatic stress disorder? And which is it? Because she talks, when she speaks, she goes, "Oh, I'm strong, I'm powerful, no one's going to hold me back." But then she goes on the stand and she does that crying thing, or whatever that is. And it's just, it's kind of, go ahead.
I think that was her trying to, everybody knows what crying looks like, but a lot of people don't understand what PTSD looks like. And I think that's her trying to emulate PTSD. She's trying to, like you said, look like a broken wreck of a person. She was trying to show like the hyperventilation. She was trying to show panic in the moment. She was trying to, but she can't cry. I mean, she proved that. And,
Yeah.
And another thing I thought was a really big giveaway that you could say, when she would, when somebody would object, she would stop. It'd be like, objection. She'd stop all of that. I mean, it would just come to a stop, sometimes completely, because she involuntarily did that. And then after you got the answer, like, overruled, then she would start back. And it was amazing to watch. So I'd wondered how that came across in the courtroom.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And also what people watching at home don't see is when she leaves the witness stand and she's walking back to her table, the only people who get to see her face are us, right? Because there's no camera behind us, because they, would show the jury, and we're able to see the reaction on her face. And yeah, you're right. It's totally different. It's like, okay, that's the character I was supposed to be on the stand. Once she steps down, totally different thing. She's looking at her lawyers, and a tiny little bit of a smirk, and then the hugging thing and the rest of it, and then they're back in business. So the people in the gallery were laughing at her. They really were, serious laughing. People were snickering under their breath. They would say things like, "Give her an Oscar," right? And then somebody else would say, "Give her an Oscar. She doesn't deserve a freaking, that's terrible acting." And so, right. So on one hand, somebody's trying to make a joke by saying, "Give her an Oscar," and you understand why they say it, because it's sarcastic. But then you have somebody else who's equally sarcastic saying, "Nah, she doesn't deserve an Oscar. That was terrible." You're right.
Right. Yeah, it did look like a B-list movie acting. I mean, it really did.
Yeah, it was absolutely awful. So but anyway, like I said, there's a lot of. It was astonishing that there wasn't anybody there, that nobody showed up on her behalf.
Yeah, I just when I watched all that, I figured in the courtroom it'd be an absolute mess.
Not even. What else was annoying? Did you watch the Rittenhouse trial?
Oh yeah, I did. Mm-hmm. Oh, Scott, I don't know if
nobody showed up on her behalf.
Yeah, I just when I watched all that,
that's terrible acting. And so,
right.
So on one hand, somebody's trying to make a joke by saying, "Give her an Oscar," and you understand why they say it, because it's sarcastic. But then you have somebody else who's equally sarcastic saying, "Nah, she doesn't deserve an Oscar. That was terrible." You're right.
Right. Yeah, it did look like a B-list movie acting. I mean, it really did.
Yeah, it was absolutely awful. So but anyway, like I said, there's a lot of. It was astonishing that there wasn't anybody there.
It'd be like, objection. She'd stop all of that. I mean, it would just come to a stop, sometimes completely, because she involuntarily did that. And then after you got the answer, like, overruled, then she would start back. And it was amazing to watch. So I'd wondered how that came across in the courtroom.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And also, what people watching at home don't see is when she leaves the witness stand and she's walking back to her table, the only people who get to see her face are us, right? Because there's no
Right.
camera behind us because they, would show the jury, and we're able to see the reaction on her face. And yeah, you're right. It's totally different. It's like, okay, that's the character I was supposed to be on the stand. Once she steps down, totally different thing. She's looking at her lawyers, and a little bit of a tiny little bit of a smirk, and then the hugging thing and the rest of it, and then they're back in back in business. So the people in the gallery were laughing at her. They really were serious laughing. People were snickering under their breath. They would say things like, "Give her an Oscar." Right. And then somebody else would say, "Give her an Oscar. She doesn't deserve a freaking, that's terrible acting." And so,
Right.
right. So on one hand, somebody's trying to make a joke by saying, "Give her an Oscar." And you understand why they say it because it's sarcastic. But then you have somebody else who's equally sarcastic saying, "Nah, she doesn't deserve an Oscar. That was terrible." You're right.
Right. Yeah, it did look like a B-list movie acting. I mean, it really did.
Yeah, it was absolutely awful. But anyway, like I said, there's a lot of. It was astonishing that there wasn't any there that nobody showed up on her behalf.
Yeah, I just when I watched all that, I figured in the courtroom it'd be an absolute mess.
Not even. What else was annoying? Did you watch the Rittenhouse trial?
Oh yeah, I did. I lost you for a second, man. You blipped out for a second.
Oh, I'm here.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You asked, did I watch the Rittenhouse trial?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a gentleman. I don't know his name, but he kept shifting his body every time he got asked a question in order to turn to the jury. And no matter what it was, he did this pivot, and it was so annoying that it would be something like, it was astonishing that there wasn't anybody there that nobody showed up on her behalf.
Yeah, I just when I watched all that, I figured in the courtroom it'd be an absolute mess.
Not even. What else was annoying? Did you watch the Rittenhouse trial?
Oh yeah, I did. Second.
Oh, I'm here.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You asked, did I watch the Rittenhouse trial?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a gentleman. I don't know his name, but he kept shifting his body every time he got asked a question in order to turn to the jury. And no matter what it was, he did this pivot, and it was so annoying that it would be something like, so I'm just surprised that nobody told Amber how incredibly annoying it looks to constantly keep shifting back and forth. And like I said, the jury, for the most part, didn't seem to want to look at her, right? Except for jurors number 6 and 7. For the most part, most of them would just kind of tune out or not look at her. And for her to constantly be I think it annoyed them. And that might be another reason why they weren't looking at her. Because if she just looked at them and told them a story, and if it was natural and it was a compelling story, like sitting around a campfire and somebody's talking to you, then you want to look at them. But if they're going to constantly keep looking away, then looking at you, then looking away, then looking back, and I think it was just driving them a bit crazy. And I'm just surprised that nobody had said anything to her. Now, I understand that she doesn't have as much money as Johnny Depp. I understand that she doesn't have as much media experience as Johnny Depp. But you and I and everybody listening to this would be self-conscious enough to know how ridiculous this looks.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I've told people too, if you want to compare what she's tried to do in this to how it started out, you can go online and find her from 2016. You can find where the divorce settlement, you can find about 18 minutes of footage out of that. Compare that to what you saw. You can tell where she's tried to improve. But like you said, somebody should have been there telling her how to do this and how absurd it looks. I think somebody did tell her how absurd it looked when she got back on the stand, because she didn't try so much of that second time. Yeah.
I'm going to give you some exclusive information now that I've not heard a single person talk about on any show. So you're going to be the first person to get this. You ready?
Solid. Yeah, sure.
Okay. So one of the days that I was in there, I was sitting on Johnny Depp's side. Now, most of the attorneys that showed up, they wanted to sit behind Amber so they can get a very, very good view of the jury. Right. And so you've had really great, really smart guys there. Right. Because like Runkle was there. He would sit, behind Amber. Rob from Law and Lumber, very, very nice guy, smart guy, sat behind Amber. Great place to sit, great view of the jury, makes total sense to sit there. But one day I ended up sitting on behind Johnny Depp, right, on that side. And what that allowed me to do, and I didn't realize this, was I was able to see Elaine's hands at the podium. Whereas everybody sitting on Amber's side wasn't able to see that because she was standing there. And so she had her back to them. So obviously, if somebody's standing with their back to you, you don't see what their hands are doing. So I had this great vantage point. And when she was asking questions, and I watched her all day long, every day asking questions. And Elaine's usually pretty calm, cool as a cucumber, right? No matter how she may sound, her arms are doing her thing, just sitting on the side, or maybe she has her fingers, moving things along or turning pages. When she asked Amber questions, I was watching her hands. It looked like she was ready to pull the skin off of her fingers. She was so nervous that I would assume, and I'm not a mind reader, I'm not one of these weirdos who tries to read the inner thoughts of complete strangers based on, facial expressions or something like that. But I never saw Elaine act like this before. But when she asked questions to Amber, her hands were being squished together. She was practically, I'm not kidding, it looked like she was going to pull her fingers off. She was doing everything she could to just kind of keep her hands just sort of in control, right? The amount of nerves that she must have had going on, just waiting or in anticipation of Amber maybe screwing something up. But it was fascinating. I actually took 2 pages of notes on it, like all the different things that she was doing to her hands. I think I used every adjective I could think of for the word scrunch. I mean, she was squeezing her palms. She was squishing her fingers. She was like, it looked like she was cracking her knuckles. I mean, everything. And as soon as Amber was gone, as soon as she wasn't on the stand anymore, back to normal. Hands to the side or, very casually. But that was something. I didn't anticipate, I didn't expect that. And it just goes to show you how frustrating it must have been to have somebody like Amber as a client and not knowing which direction she might go in.
It's got to be frustrating when, as her defender, to look into the public eye and to see how the public sees her. Not that, I know they try to write everyone off as Johnny Depp fans, but I mean, the general public was just like, this woman is lying. She's to the point that she became worldwide memes because of the lack of crying and stuff. That's got to be, God, they had to know that was a quite high potential for it going that way. And then, of course, you're the person who defended her. So,
well, the media likes to create problems. They like to divide people. They like to get people angry at each other. But the majority of people that are online, that are in the gallery, are women.
Hey, man, I got the YouTube gods kicked me off like in the middle of a trial. I thought I'd been banned or something. So, because I couldn't connect. I used this, to connect, and YouTube just... It hit a wall, nothing else, no other platform. Like I said, I thought I'd gotten struck or something, and it went on for 30 minutes, and then bam, it was back. So
yeah. Well, something. At the very least, we should be grateful that this technology even exists, because years ago, a conversation like this would never be happening because there'd be no such thing. Yep. We'd be on the phone right now with a rotary dial. So even if we get bits and pieces. It's priceless because the whole map has changed with the way the world works. But what I was going to say is that the women in the gallery who I spoke to, they're angry about this also because they have husbands, they have boyfriends, they have friends, they have dads, they have men in their lives. And so this whole idea that women are supposed to be on the side of Amber simply because they all share a vagina, they all have vaginas, doesn't make any sense. Nobody wants an Amber in their life if you're a guy. Nobody wants an Amber in the life of somebody that they care about, who's a guy. And I think part of the reason, people think that the attraction to this trial is the celebrity. And okay, it's true that Johnny Depp obviously is a big star and it attracts a lot of people. But if he wasn't famous, they would still be interested in it because it's a crazy freaking story. Right. And it's also not a story of, and I hear this also on some of these YouTube clickbait channels, that it's 2 millionaires fighting over money. No, it ain't that. First of all, I'm amazed that Amber's a millionaire. The hell's that all about? I mean, who the hell's giving? I mean, I can understand Johnny Depp giving her $7 million. That okay, so she's a millionaire. But if she just spent six of it, at the very least, on legal fees, and spent another million on I don't know clothes and arnica cream or whatever the hell, then I don't know what else she has left. She has money from other things.
She got a very nice benefactor is what it is, paying for all these legal fees. I'm telling you, like they brought it up in court filings. That's one of the reasons I personally think that Elon Musk didn't show up, because the first question that would have been is, are you paying for this trial? And I think the answer is, well, I think we would have found out a very interesting answer there, and it would have made even more of a oh my God moment.
I think you're right, and I'll tell you why. Because under normal circumstances, if that's pretty much all she's got, right? Let's just say she's got, I don't know, let's just grab a number. Let's say she's with the money that she. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. You just, I tell you that right when you start roboting, because like we can't hear it on our side, like if it happens to me, and I like it when somebody, so I don't say 9 or 10 sentences before. All right. So you were saying we got to the normal circumstances.
Let's assume she has $10 million. Okay, that's her net worth. She has 10 million smackaroos, and she's being sued. At this point, why would you? I think that a lot of people would say, you know what, it's going to cost me $6 million in legal fees, and there's a very good chance I might not win. Let me go ahead and just settle. Whatever he wants, let me get the hell out of this, because this could financially. What I'm saying is that you're probably 100% correct about her having a benefactor, but if you took that out of the equation, I can't imagine her going through this, because this could financially devastate her. And not to mention, look what it's doing to her career. She could have just said, look, let me make a statement. Let me give him back his $7 million. Let me get the hell out of this, so I don't become a laughing stock around the world. What in the world do you think was her motivation to move forward with this? Because it's sociopathic.
Yeah. I believe that she's vindictive. I believe that Johnny Depp walked away from somebody that people don't walk away from. You don't walk away from Amber Heard. She. I mean, look at her being this. Her image has always been of Hollywood beauty. She's even played like femme fatale figures. You can see what she thinks of herself, and then you walk away. I mean, somebody tells her no. What happens? They got to pay.
Yeah. I understand that that's the way she thinks in her normal life. But why doesn't she have anybody around her that could shake her to her senses and say, are you out of your mind? Do you know what this is going to do to your reputation? Do you know what this is going to do to you if you lose?
Well, it didn't start that way at first. That was the thing. It worked. Like her thing, when she accused him publicly at first, you're in the middle of the biggest upswing with Me Too. You could destroy anybody, and it took him out. I mean, it destroyed his career. So she was just riding high on all of that. She has the ACLU behind the scenes, telling her, we have all this political push, we have all this political clout, we can help you on that level. So you have a lot of people that you may have some people that were telling her that's a bad idea, but anybody that tells Amber that seems to be, again, you remember the whole broken relationship thing. You tell her what she doesn't like, you end up on the wayside, you're on the roadside, you're gone.
What are your thoughts about how this is going to affect the ACLU as far as their donations? Because who in Hollywood, who in their right mind would ever give money to them ever again when you see that the devious, nefarious role they played? The last thing I'm going to do on ever is make Amber a victim. But the simple fact of the matter is they kind of took her for a ride, didn't they? I mean, if they put that op-ed together, right, they sort of dangled her around. What do you think about that?
Well, they convinced her that, even her lawyer said that we think Johnny Depp is litigious, so we're going to try to set this up where you can't be sued. That's not. If you look through though what he's doing, he's trying to set it up so she can win a lawsuit. They keep telling her so you can't be sued. They thought that they could go out. They thought that they could. They thought this lawsuit would probably end up somewhere like California, where it would get tossed because free speech right off the bat. That's what they were aiming for. They tried to change the venue. I think they. I thought they thought they could get away with it, and yeah, I do think that they lied to her about her chances of getting sued. Even it's just amazing. It's amazing. They found somebody that was dumb enough to go out there and do it, and they did.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how much she may realize this. I mean, there's no doubt that she's a sociopath. People say she's a psychopath. That's not an accurate definition. I think that includes somebody who murders, right? Sociopath is pretty much the same thing, except you're not a murderer. But as far as basically having ice water running through your veins, right? She's not the warmest thing in the world. But at some point, you think she has to sit back and say, "Holy shit, I really screwed up." But who knows? There's no way of knowing. Even when all this ends, and if she writes a book about it, which is entirely possible, we're just never going to find out the truth about what in the world she was truly thinking about why she did what she did.
Yeah, like a psychopath feels no emotion. They fake it. A sociopath does have emotion, like the rage, the resentment. Oh, those look very real. So there's your sociopath. The lack of remorse. They can have some remorse, but not really. I think there's some factors in there. I thought again, I walk this line carefully because in my real life I'm a mental health practitioner, but I thought the diagnosis that they threw out there was a pretty good one. I really think hammering that idea of malingering home too. I mean, trying to describe how badly she faked the signs of PTSD, it's hard to get that across. Like when they talk about the 98th percentile, I mean, yeah, that sounds bad. It's worse. I've had some pretty bad tries at people faking different things. They wanted a lawsuit against organizations. Normally, I've had a couple of those come in, and man, they even didn't go this far. I mean, she just whacked out all the way out because again, she thought she could get away with anything.
I spent a lot of time looking at the other people in the gallery to gauge their reactions, and yeah, even the thing with her post-traumatic stress disorder, but also with the witnesses on her side that would describe Johnny Depp as a narcissist. And people would listen, and I would watch them turn their heads and whisper to each other, who are they? Is it looking at Amber or Depp? It's like the way they were describing Johnny Depp as far as being a narcissist, it was actually a very well description of Amber instead.
Yep.
So it was really interesting that the ammunition they tried to use against.
Here's one question I do want to hit you with.
Go ahead.
Do you think all this conversation, do you think that kind of point they resonated with the jury? Did you see any sign that resonates with the jury? The mental health description, again, the ridiculous nature of the presentation of what Depp is presenting versus what she's presenting.
Yeah, good question. In the same way that jurors didn't seem interested in looking at Amber, it was the same way with a lot of their witnesses. That the only exceptions mainly were 6 and 7. The two Caucasians, the older one, number 6, and the younger one, number 7. They were the only ones that just seemed to constantly be, paying attention or looking, but none of them really seemed interested. The witnesses were so annoying on Amber's side that it was just, what was that one guy, Spiegel? I don't remember.
Oh yeah, Spiegel, God, man.
Right? He acted like he was at in the professor's lounge at Duke University, right, sipping his chamomile tea, and right, smoking cigars and hanging out with his friends. And it was so unprofessional, his behavior. It was like watching the guy. What was that? Doc Brown? Is that his name from Back to the Future?
Yeah. Yes. A lot of people mentioned that too. He did. He seemed off his freaking rocker. I mean, when he was out there, and he got called on a lot of that behavior too. And I mean, he just doubled and tripled down. I thought, man, this guy, he's doing damage to her, and he doesn't even realize it. He doesn't realize how terrible he looks on the stand.
Exactly. People on the jury, right? They're not from another planet. They're just like you. They're just like the people in the gallery. They're just like the people watching. And if we all found this guy and some of their other witnesses so incredibly annoying, intolerable, intolerable. The jury had to feel the same way. It's not like they live right like somewhere else, and it's like, oh, to them he's normal. No, they couldn't look at him either. They didn't want to look at them because, like I said, nobody wants to be lied to. Nobody. And how do you look at somebody in the face when you know that they're knowingly, lying to you? And none of them had a good presence or warmth. The Dr. Curry, right, the muffin lady, she came back in and she's an absolute joy. I mean, she's like a gift from Mount Olympus, right? Like the gods have sent her down to, this angel to come down and move along the mortals. And she walks into the room and she's happy and she's smiling. She has this warmth, and she goes up there and she does exactly what she's supposed to do, right? Slices and dices, and then gets off there, and she's just an absolute joy. And Depp had that repeatedly. I heard, and I don't know how you feel about this or not, but somebody said that one of the reasons why, and this is a horrible thing I'm about to say, but I'm just telling you that I've heard other people say this, so I'm just sort of regurgitating it,
Sure.
that the reason that Amber's witnesses are so, and I hate to say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, unattractive, is because Amber wouldn't be able to tolerate having somebody like a Dr. Curry on her side. Somebody who would be more attractive or steal the light. What do you think about that?
I believe that. I very much believe that because, part of, again, I thought the diagnosis fit really well. And part of that is being the center of attention, being the most attractive person. The princess archetype, the victim archetype. But yeah, you have to be the most beautiful. You have to be the center of attention. And yeah, I don't think she would want. I mean, because everybody, if you look at them, and it's also the people she surrounds herself with, just to be honest. She doesn't surround herself with females that are the top tier Hollywood beauties, as it were. She may have had an affair with one or two of them, which came out. We didn't get to see that in the courtroom, but it came out in like Josh Drew's statements. That was a part that got clipped out, but she doesn't stay around those people very long.
Yeah, exactly. And even her sister is younger, right? Whitney is younger than her?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. And so they share similar traits. And I don't know what Whitney does for a living. I'm assuming she doesn't have that much bread, right? But Amber does. And you would think she would do something to help her sister look a little bit better. She wore this, I don't know if you remember, like if you look at those old ads from the 1970s, there used to be a realtor company called Century 21. And they all wore these really ugly sort of beige vests, right? These beige jackets. They were kind of feltish like. And that's how Whitney dressed. I mean, she came in there with this ugly beige jacket. And you just say to yourself, Amber is coming in. She's all dolled up. God knows what that cost to have her hair done like that every day. She has her makeup done. And why doesn't she extend that kindness to her sister, right? Why doesn't she do something to help her out? Do you know the story about the extensions in Whitney's hair?
Go ahead and tell.
No? Okay. Yeah. So she was sitting in front of us the other day, and I kept thinking to myself, she looks really sad. I'm never going to have a conversation with her because that's creepy and it's probably a security concern. But I thought, okay, if I ever bump into her in the hallway, at the very least, I'm going to smile, or hold the door open or something like that, which I ended up doing, by the way. I ended up holding the door. I didn't know it was her. I just held the door open, and then she and an officer walked through it. But I thought, what could I say to her to just sort of elevate her mood even slightly, just as a fellow human being, because she just looks so bad, devastated. So I thought to myself, she has all this hair, right? And that's kind of cool in a way. Like, all right, she has all this hair. Maybe I'll say to her, I like your hair, something. It was just a thought in my head. I wasn't really going to do it. Because you think to yourself, look at the family we're dealing with. The last thing I'm going to do is say something to her and have her accuse me of sexual harassment because I said she has nice hair. But then a lady in the row with me told me that it wasn't really her hair; it was extensions, right? And so she had all these extensions added, and that it wasn't real, and it looked really awful, at least to this female. So somebody, I won't say who, tweeted about that. It wasn't me. Somebody tweeted about her hair extensions. After the break, I guess she found out about the tweet because she came back in and all of that was gone and she had her hair tied up in a bun. So that's unusual, isn't it?
It is. It's kind of, but she's left her sister out to to drive for quite a few different occasions. You know, again, Eastern Columbia building. She ends up living with Jennifer Howe. She ends up out on her own. No support from her until I guess she's useful in the lawsuit, and then bam, she's back.
Yeah, exactly right. Does anybody know where Amber is living right now? Is she in Los Angeles? Does she has a girlfriend or something? Right? Is that any idea?
Yeah, well, she's apparently with Eve Barlow, who got kicked out of the courtroom. You know,
Okay.
that's what we were hearing about. So I'm not sure where she lives. I try not to look at that kind of stuff. You know, again,
Yeah.
I don't want to ever I don't want to ever hear that because you know they obsess over me. So I just don't even look at that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, because people have asked me to do some video on her home, and I'm thinking, first of all, no. I'm not doing that. I'm not interested. And like I said, Johnny Depp just has really beautiful properties, you know, just very interesting, his real estate portfolio and just really, really cool stuff. And so I was happy to do something to showcase that. You know, it's kind of like when John Lennon lived in New York. You know, a lot of people just walk past the Dakota and they see it as just the place where John Lennon, you know, lived and died. But there's so much more to it to know than just that, and most people just don't know. But yeah, I don't have much of an interest in writing about where Amber lived. I think people are just curious, you know, where she is these days. I think her days of Hollywood are over, and it's not necessarily just because of her age. Because you look at somebody like Chaz Palminteri, and he wrote The Bronx Tale, I think, when he was about 40, right? And he didn't really have much of a career before then. I think he was just a working actor here and there when he could do it. But then he did that, and he had a whole new career trajectory. But as far as Amber, at this point, was she 35, 36 years old? So, you know, in a few years, she's basically a 40-year-old mom with with not much of a credit behind her. You know, that list of when they were trying to figure out the damages and they were comparing her to all sorts of different stars, right? And the value that they were able to bring to the box office. I think people were offended by that. I can tell you right now, juror number 2, the gentleman with the hearing aid, he was not liking hearing Amber's team talk about how Aquaman was the greatest movie ever made in the history of the world, or whatever the hell it is they kept saying. He actually scrunched up his face like, what the hell are you talking about? And so I think that surprised a lot of people. I still don't know what in the world that meant. Is it the most successful movie ever made? What does that even mean? Financially?
Well, it means that they're lying repeatedly. They're trying to say, you know, it's the in the DC film. If they would have just stopped there, DC, superhero movies. Yeah, okay, we could have gone with the DCEU, but with biggest movies, I think it's number 24. You know, so I mean, it's not even in the top 20. It's so ridiculous.
And there's different ways, you know, to describe success, because it also depends on what a movie cost in comparison to what it actually earned. You know, that's why Blair Witch Project, you know, is still considered one of the most successful movies, because, you know, what it cost $50, you know, and then you consider how much it made, and, you know, and then you have movies like Rocky. But, you know, honestly, and I don't want to bore you to death, but probably one of the most successful movies ever was in the 1970s. There was a movie called Billy Jack. Did you ever hear of that?
I don't remember it, like not off the top of my head.
Yeah, but what happened is they made this movie, and it was the studio just gave up on it and says, look, we're not going to bother doing anything with this, and they were going to shelve it. And the star of it said, well, give it to me. If you're not going to do anything with it, give it to me and let me try to make money off of it. And so the studio says, yeah, fine, take it, we don't care. And this was in the 70s. He created something called four-walling. And what he did is this actor just traveled around the country, and he would rent movie theaters. And that's why it's called four-walling. And so he would rent movie theaters, he would take out ads, and then people would come in, and then he would split the profits 50-50 with the movie theater and kept the rest of it. And the guy made a fortune off of this one movie because the studio abandoned it. And I think afterward they said, oh God, we screwed up. And so they made, a second one and a third one after that. But there's lots of different ways to define that. But Aquaman, yeah, that was a bit curious to a lot of people that it was the most successful movie ever made, when I would think most of the people in the gallery that I spoke to hadn't even seen it. So, anyway, listen, I know how busy you are, and I know you've got a lot of super chats to go with. If there's any other questions that you have, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, if you want me to come on board another time with specific questions, I'm more than happy to. I just
if you think anything you want to bring up again, like just hit me up. And you got my email. Yeah. Hit me up. I appreciate you coming on too. Like I said, I appreciate what you guys were doing. You know, again, you're in one place that we don't have access to. You have this one place, and I don't know. I like to collect information from everywhere and just see what people are seeing in their observations.
It was surprising to me once again that there weren't more serious people there, that there were a handful of us. And had we not been there, had you and I not been having this conversation, it's just crazy that had I not gone there, you would not know a lot of this information. Nobody would. Because there was nobody there that cared enough to go in. Or maybe they just want to stick to their agenda, the mainstream media. Because they could have gotten in if they wanted to.
Well, most of it, like for myself, I knew if I went there, they would have got me booted out. I knew it right away. Like, you know, I knew better than to go. I absolutely knew better. So I'm glad that people like yourself and other people, because the mainstream media will not send any truth. They don't want the truth. It goes against the narrative. It actually goes against some of their biggest sponsors too. I mean, when you get down to it, because you know, Warner Brothers, they may have came out in the trial and talked about this, but they knew the truth about this for 2 years and they sat on it. They allowed this to continue, this farce, and it hurts their bottom line. So, yeah, nobody really wants all that stuff going out. So, yeah. Anyway, but like I said, I appreciate folks like yourself. Yeah, if you think anything else you want to bring up, just like hit me up, man. Yeah.
Okay. Do you mind if I mention my YouTube channel?
No, I was going to ask you too. Throw your YouTube channel out there. I want to sub myself. So
I appreciate that. It's under my name. My first name is Scott. The last name is Cardinal, just like the bird. And we weren't able to bring cameras into the courtroom, but I did film. You can go and watch all of the lines at night. I recorded all of that. And it was the stampedes, the craziness, everything. You can see it all. It's right there documented, not edited at all. Exactly the way it happened is exactly what you'll see. So if you go to the Scott Cardinal channel, you can watch all of it.
All right, cool. I'll drop a link to it in the description too. I just hunted it down. So
okay, my friend. And you don't need me to tell you this, but everybody really appreciates your hard work.
Oh yeah, well I appreciate it, man. You know, yeah. I mean, I had to get involved in it because you know the mainstream, they lied, and somebody had to talk about it. You know,
exactly.
So, it wasn't just me. Anyway, I'll let you go, bud, and I appreciate you, and I'll throw this out there too.
Okay, my friend. I appreciate it. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.